Okay, so now we know that JavaScript can interact with the DOM. In this video, I'm going to show you some methods of selecting elements on a web page. So let's get started with a new folder for the new section, and then call this section the DOM. And then we need to get a folder from any of the previous videos, just as a starter template. So copy any one of those and paste them in. So this is number 1, and this is called accessing elements. And then open that up in your text editor. So just drag that in like that. So we need to get started with a new title. So accessing elements. And then we can delete all the code from below between the script tags. So in previous videos, we've looked at document.getElementById. And then we can select an element off the web page. So if we had a level 1 heading, and this had an ID, for example, of title, we can then grab this level 1 heading by its ID of title, and then we can do various things such as setting the inner HTML to be equal to anything which we want. So let's set this to displaying JavaScript in web pages. So when this is opened up in the browser, the empty level 1 heading should have the text which we've placed at the bottom there. So let's open it up. There we go, so there's our level 1 heading. And there's also various other methods we can use to select elements on a web page. So the next method I want to show you of grabbing elements on web pages is by using the query selector. So as well as selecting elements by their ID, we can also select elements in the same way as we would in the CSS by using their CSS selector. So let's create an example with some text. So let's create 3 p tags with some class names. So this one can be first, and then the content can be first line, and duplicate that twice. So second, and the class of third. And just leave this third one blank just for now. Okay, so now we know how to access a element by its ID. Next, I want to move on to accessing an element by its CSS selector. And we can do that with document.querySelector. So let's take a look at that. So document.querySelector. And then inside the brackets, we want to pass in the CSS selector. So in our case, I'm going to put in the class. So let's put the class of second inside there. And then we can make some changes. So we can add style dot background color. And then we can set that to be equal to any value we want. So let's set that to be red. And now the second line should have a background color of red. So let's save that. And in fact, we can just comment this section out and then refresh inside the browser. So now we've selected the second line by its ID and replaced the background color. If we change this to be first, we could just change it over by its class name, and then that would select the first line. So that can be really handy for selecting elements on a web page. So as well as selecting elements by their CSS name, we can also select elements by their class name. So let's just delete this example, and we can use the paragraph text from before. So let's create a variable called selector, and this is going to be set to document.getElements by class name. And just be wary with that this has got a S on the end of elements, where getElementById doesn't have the S on the end because we're only selecting one particular ID, whereas getElementsByClassName will return all of the elements on that page with a particular class name. And then we want to select the class name to target. So let's add a class to the level 1 heading of heading. And then we'll just put these inside the brackets. And then the semicolon at the end. So this would select all the elements with the class name of heading. So if there was more than one, we would then need to declare which element we want to target by its index number. So in our case, we've only got one class of heading, so that would be index number 0. If we had a second line with the same class, this would be index number 1. So then let's change the inner HTML and set that to some text. So class name selected. And let's run that inside the browser. And there we go, so there's our level 1 heading with class name selected. And another one which you may find really useful is document.getElements by tag name. And it works in a pretty similar way to the last example. So the tag name is either the H1 or the P, or it could be any one of the elements on the web page. It can even be a div or a image. So this time the selector is going to be equal to document.getElements by tag name. So let's select the P tags. And then just the same as before, we can then put an index number. So 0, 1 and 2. So number 1 is the second line of text on there. And this time, so we know it's working, we'll simply print out tag name selected. So save. There you go. So now line 2 is changed to tag name selected. So if we change this to 0, tag name selected should now be the first line. There you go. So the last example I'm going to show you in this video is to select the number of images inside the document with document.images. So to do that, we need to create some images inside the web page. You don't actually have to have any images physically there. We can just make up some image names. So image 1, image 2, image 3, and then image 4. And then if we want to know how many images are on that web page, we could create a variable called number of images. And the number of images is going to be equal to document.images.length. And then we can print to the screen the number of images in a string. So let's create a empty element to display these in. So a h1 tag with ID of example. And then let's do a document.getElement by ID. And then select the example. And then paste that in. And then we can set the text with the inner HTML. So let's set this to this page has, and then a space, plus the variable, which is going to contain the number of images on the page. Then plus, and then we want the word images inside a string. Okay, so if that works well, we should get the text displayed of this page has, and then 4 images. So let's save that and take a look. Great, so that's working fine. If we were to delete one of these images, that should now be changed to 3. So there we go. So there's lots of different methods you can use to access elements on a web page. And I recommend you take a look at the Mozilla website, which I'll provide a link to. There's many more examples on there. So hopefully you now understand that we can access pretty much any part of a document or of a web page that we want. And in the next video, we'll move on to how we can manipulate or change these elements. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you there.